Just a quick reminder before we start this week's show, the Southampton Women's Football Club has reached another Hampshire FA Cup final. They'll be taking on the Portsmouth FC ladies at Havant and Waterlooville FC at 7:45 on Wednesday, March 28th. So head down to Portsmouth, wear red and white, make the girls feel at home, and help them bring home another trophy. And in case you were wondering, in their last 5 matches, they've scored 19 goals and allowed just 1. All right, now here's the show. You're listening to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans.
I'm really happy to be here. It's a pleasure for me.
Fonte with a scooping header.
I would like to make the most of with this opportunity.
It's infield to Mane, 25 yards out. Lovely ball for Pella. Onside, 1-0. Buffon shot. Oh my word.
We ran around a bit like Bambi on ice. Really very, very embarrassing to watch.
And now, your host, Matt Markstone. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans. My name is Matt Markstone. I'm the host of the show, and no matter where you are, no matter how you may be listening, thank you for making the show part of your day. I hope that you enjoy it. Now, you may notice that my voice sounds slightly different, and that is because I'm recording this for the second time. Because as we all know, earlier today, Mauricio Pellegrino was sacked by the Southampton Football Club. When I told my students, this is what they said. Now, all joking aside, we don't wish Mauricio Pellegrino any kind of ill will. I don't think, as a human being, I'm sure he's a normal person. I'm sure he's fine. He just definitely wasn't a good fit. But I'm really getting tired of saying that about the managers at the club. But obviously, Josh, my guest from this week, who runs the Saints FC page on Instagram, we recorded on Sunday, and we even waited a little bit for various reasons. But we're kind of waiting, especially after that performance, to see if it would happen. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't think it was going to. I thought Pellegrino was here for the remainder of the season. But if you really look at the calendar, this is it. This is the last chance to part ways with the manager and really give anybody who comes in any chance to have an impact and possibly save the season. So I think it was the manner of the defeat, and judging from the writing of Adam Leitch and some of the comments that I've heard elsewhere, it really was the manner of the defeat. It wasn't the fact that we lost to Newcastle. It was the fact that we didn't show any fight, that there was nothing there. And I think that is finally what kind of broke the camel's back. That's the straw that broke the camel's back. That's what cost Pellegrino his job. And in terms of the podcast was done. I was at work when the news broke that Pellegrino was sacked, and I was kind of thinking, what am I going to do? Am I going to come home? Am I going to try to do this? And I'll be honest, I wasn't having a very good day. I had a pretty terrible start to the day. And then it got better. And then it got a little better. And then I'm in a meeting and I see the news that Pellegrino's been sacked. And I kind of got really excited. And then somebody asked me if my wife was pregnant. Like, did I get a message on my phone that my wife is pregnant? This is an overshare for sure, but I said, no, I have a vasectomy. If my wife texted me that she was pregnant, we'd have real issues. But no, I said, the Saints just sacked their manager and everybody just told me to shut up, and we went back to our meeting. But then I had all these ideas, do I call some people? Do I have them record? Do I do something kind of spur of the moment? What do we do? Because to be honest, Josh and I, when we had our conversation about the game, about Newcastle, about the club, you will notice that my voice doesn't sound this way because it was a very somber, kind of sober conversation. It wasn't a fun conversation for the most part. We were both kind of dejected by the performance, and you'll hear that, and I'll pretty much play the conversation in its entirety because Josh and I still talk about other things, because even though the manager is gone, and I think everybody feels that's a good move, or most people feel it's a good move, there are still plenty of issues at the club. And whether it's the board members and management in general, whether it's the players not really showing any fight against Newcastle, whatever it is, there are plenty of issues to be sorted out. So Josh and I are going to run through the kind of the normal conversation, but I had to sit down and re-record the intro, obviously, because I didn't know Pellegrino was sacked when I originally recorded it. So enough of this. Let's go ahead and get into my conversation with Josh, who runs the Saints FC page on Instagram. The links are in the show notes. Make sure you check it out if you don't already follow him. He is just under 1,500 followers on that page. So if we can get him there, that'd be great. And so I hope you enjoy it. And if you're one of the new listeners, we got an influx of Instagram followers and hopefully new listeners. So normally I'm not this excited, I don't think. But I don't know. We'll see. Maybe this is a new me. Who knows? Anyway, here's my conversation with Josh, who runs the Saints FC page on Instagram. We'd like to welcome to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all the SFC fans. Josh from the Saints FC page on Instagram and Twitter. You can find it at the Saints FC page. And Josh, thanks for joining me. I know it's Mother's Day. I didn't realize that when I set this up with you, and I apologize, but I appreciate you taking some time away from your family to talk to me about what was a pretty atrocious display up in Newcastle yesterday.
Yeah, it was pretty awful, man. But it's my pleasure to join you here, and I appreciate the invitation.
I know. Always a pleasure to chat to other fans and get their perspective and stuff. But before we jump into the game and I'll do all that stuff, let's just start with you. Did you grow up in the Southampton area? You live in the Southampton area, or whereabouts do you live in the UK?
I currently don't live in Southampton. I live in I'm more closer to Bournemouth than I am to Southampton. But I was born in Southampton, but I only go there for the games now.
Well, it's all relatively close, though. Yeah.
Yeah, about an hour away at the most.
Oh, okay.
Depending on traffic and stuff.
Other Saints fans live near you, or is everybody else what's the majority fan base in the area?
In my area, it's really full of Arsenal and Bournemouth fans because, Bournemouth are local. But my brother's a Southampton fan, so it's games with him. Most of the people I'm friends with are Saints fans, so there's a few Saints fans, but mainly Bournemouth.
What about your family?
Oh, really? He's a Southampton fan, but no one else is really interested in football for me. In my family, my mum keeps up to date with stuff because she knows how passionate I am about it. But other than that, no, not really.
Oh, okay, all right. So how did you become a Saints fan, and how did you become interested in football without kind of the familial tie to it? Well,
growing up, my dad was a fan of Blackmore, and so he kind of always just watched football, and he saw it on TV. And my brother was a Saints fan, so he had a sticker put up on the window. And I kind of just grew up always saying, I support Southampton. Southampton's the club I support, even though I didn't really know much about them at the time. And it was mainly sort of 2 or 3 years ago where I started actually watching the games. I think one of the most memorable ones for me is our 4-0 win over Arsenal on Boxing Day. Uh-huh. That's probably the game I remember the most. And after, since that game especially, I became incredibly passionate about the club. And it's just since then, really, I've kind of always been a Saints fan there.
All right. And then since you guys don't live, in Southampton, do you get to attend very many matches with your brother?
Not really. I often go with my best friend, Matt. I go with him to quite a lot of the games, but it's often just whenever I can. I'm not a season ticket holder or anything. I mainly go to cup games and stuff like that.
And you have a particular stand you like to sit in when you go?
Yeah, I prefer the northern stand most of all, just because it's the loudest, fans are singing the most. That's what I like to get involved in.
All right. And then what about away matches? Do you like away matches a little bit more? Or?
I prefer home matches, the passion and the noise of the fans.
And then at some point, your kind of passion for the club moves, not just going to the game matches and singing and watching and things like that, but you got a fan page or a page on Instagram.
Yeah.
And so kind of where did that come from? What made you want to start doing that sort of thing?
It's really strange, really, because I had no idea about fan pages and stuff. And I just thought, well, I know all these players are on Instagram, and maybe if I can show my support to them, we can be in that same kind of area because they're posting on Instagram, I'm posting on Instagram, same place. We're all one club. I can show my support and they can see it. That's what it kind of started off as for me.
Okay. So just to support the players then?
Yeah, pretty much. The team get behind it all and to show it to them.
And is it still that way for you?
A little bit more to a voice for the fans more than trying to just support the team. Of course, I have to support the team with the page, but more it's just trying to show what the fans want or how the fans feel about the club and the games and the information like that. Keep them up to date with everything.
What's the most difficult part about running that page?
knowing what to put as your captions, knowing how to get your audience more motivated into getting involved with your post is the hardest thing, because I've put captions before and they upset the fans. They don't agree with me, and a lot of people they get upset and they unfollow and stuff like that. You have to know to get them involved and share their opinions without actually getting insulted in a way.
Yeah.
Just getting them excited and joining you.
I understand that, because I tend to be like kind of I don't know. I tend not to post too many controversial things. I tend to stay more kind of conservative with it, but it is frustrating because sometimes I really would like to say some things. Yeah. I think the last couple have been getting closer to that. So, but when I see guys like Adam Leitch and Adam Blackmore, when they're finally kind of letting it go a little bit, then it's like maybe this is now it's okay. Maybe it's like a little bit more justified, as long as I'm just not taking cheap shots at everybody.
Yeah, it's kind of everyone as a fan base is upset with the club, the board, the management. So if if it's come to that point where you're okay to say we are in a shambles at the moment and everyone can agree with you.
Yeah. And, some people have been saying it for a long time, and I'm just I wasn't that quick to, just keep the faith for as long as I can. But it's at this point, it's like, man, I don't know if I can anymore.
Yeah, exactly. We're never really shown anything good anymore, really. Even so, the only way we're managing to stay up is relying on teams like Crystal Palace to lose to Chelsea. And that's what we also relied on last season to get top 8. And it's just becoming repetitive now. And eventually our luck is going to run out, really.
Yeah. Oh, I think that if you would have watched us play last year, and you can look at the 8th place finish and say like, oh, they finished 8th and fired their manager, got to a cup final, all that stuff. But if you watched us play and you watched us get to that 8th place spot, I don't think very many people would have said we deserved it, or that it was definitely going to be something we can continue this year, because we're playing in largely the same style, doing largely the same things, and it's not working. But since you've had the page, has it changed the way you interact with the team? Has it changed the way you watch the matches or anything else? Or is it kind of just status quo and it's just something extra that you do?
Well, I mean, since I started running the page, I watch the players more closely, what they're actually doing in the game. Then, of course, if they make debuts like Sims or in the Tottenham game, Michael Obafemi, I kind of watch what they can do, see what they can offer, and then just share my opinion on that. It makes me watch the players individually more, whereas not just watching the whole team when they play.
Okay. All right. And then I guess what's your favorite thing about running the page?
I think it is just being a voice of the fans, just getting their opinions, and just discussing with like-minded people about what state the club is in and what we should do to move forward. And
do you run it by yourself? Is there anybody that helps you out with that?
I run it with my friend Will. He's from the States, like yourself. He posts every now and then, like rants and stuff like that, as most people will see from the most recent posts. He kind of posts when I can't when I'm not able to, or I'm not in the mood to because of the performance. He just posts rants and how everyone's feeling. He's more of he kind of says things as they are rather than just trying to keep a positive up mood, atmosphere on the page.
Okay. Yeah, because I was reading through the last couple of posts last night before we did this today, and I was like, oh, somebody's slightly upset, which I think is all of us. But
he writes paragraphs upon paragraphs about it, really. So
I don't know if you know this, but Instagram actually has a limit. Did you have a character limit?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. I thought it was always just everything. And so the first couple of times that I ever posted anything, I wrote just way too much. Like nobody's reading this. Everybody's scrolling through, clicking on a picture, and either liking it or not, and then moving on with their life. Nobody's reading it, but I still continue to write stuff just because I feel like it helps. But I've hit that word limit a couple of times and gone like, oh, that's unfortunate, but maybe it's good.
Yeah, it can be quite bad. Like that's why he had to post twice, because he's written these massive paragraphs and then had to cut it out.
So I guess now it's time to kind of talk about yesterday and talk about the season. We have some questions from fans that we'll talk about as well. But generally, when we start talking about the match, obviously it was an away match up to Newcastle. The home leg was 2-2. 2 goals from Gabbiadini, 1 from the penalty spot, 1 that was just kind of a brilliant individual goal. But starting with the lineup that the manager put out, the back 5 was essentially unchanged. Højbjerg came in for Romeu, Ward-Prowse replaced Sims, Tadic, Redmond, Carrillo, and Lamina all there. Any issues for you with either the formation or the personnel that were involved? Or if so, what would you have preferred to see?
I think I say the same thing about the formation as everybody else. I have no idea why we're still playing one up front for the first 70 minutes of the game when it's pretty obvious that Carrillo has the ability to set up other strikers to score, specifically Gabbiadini, as we saw in the Burnley game. The header down and then set up Tadic in the West Brom game. He can't score by himself, but he does set them up. The only other problem I have with it is Ward-Prowse replacing Josh Sims after the really well performance I was putting from Josh Sims in the Burnley game. And every time he comes on, Ward-Prowse can't offer much going forward as Josh Sims can.
Now,
to me, those are the only issues.
Okay. Now, so my kind of thing with Josh Sims, and I'm very likely wrong about this, but I've seen him come on and have an impact. But in the very few chances he's been given to start, I never really thought he was maybe as good. But then when you look back at last week, he started for Ward-Prowse because he had such an impact when he came on the week before. And I thought he was much better than Redmond in the first half, and I'm probably equal with him the second half. But yet Redmond gets the start on the left-hand side and Ward-Prowse comes in. And do you think it's simply because of the set piece opportunities, or what do you think is going through the manager's mind in making that decision?
It's very difficult to see what's going through Pellegrino's mind actually with the repeated tactics, but I think Ward-Prowse is definitely there for the set pieces. His corners are almost second to none in the Premier League, but the issue is it is just the set pieces he can offer. Redmond, for me, he's always anonymous for me. I don't really see him doing much in the game. It's counter-attacks you see Redmond on. Ward-Prowse is just for set pieces, and we need players like Josh Sims who can turn our offense to an attack, and I don't believe those players can actually do that, like Ward-Prowse and Redmond. I don't think they offer that.
Last week, I would have said that he put out the wrong team just in general, because we're playing Burnley away. They're going to sit back and sit deep, and they're well organized and going to have to be kind of broken down. And I didn't think that Redmond and Sims were the proper players to do that. I probably would have liked to see maybe a front three of, if Ward-Prowse is going to be there, great. If not, maybe Tadic and Gabbiadini and Buffalo in there, because we need players who are going to move and create space and do that. And so I was a little kind of befuddled by the fact that he had Redmond and Sims in there to run behind into nothing, into no space. And, maybe this week that's a little bit different, but, we didn't obviously, as we'll get into it a little more, but we didn't offer anything going forward this week at all. And it was pretty disheartening to tell you the truth, because this is a team that's sitting one place above us, significantly less kind of value in their squad, significantly kind of less quality in their squad. And yet we are, getting blown out 3-0. And we're lucky that's all it was, I think.
I have to agree with you with that. 3-0, I think, is kind of flattering for us, the performance we put in. The idea between the Burnley game, I think, genuinely was him just planning counterattacks, Mauricio Pellegrino, but it didn't really work out for us because we are poor pretty much everywhere these days. If you look at the goal we conceded against Burnley, we should not have conceded that. The defence were letting McCarthy down a lot, and McCarthy wasn't able to recover from his save. And it's the same thing we see constantly with the defence and the team that we have, is that everybody wants to go forward, but Pellegrino tells them to stay back, and they don't really know what they're doing. So they're constantly all in the wrong places. And if you look at the Matt Ritchie goal that made it 3-0 against Newcastle, it was so easy for him just to place it. It was almost the same as the goal we conceded in our 3-2 loss from Jesse Lingard in the EFL final last season. We just don't mark properly, and so they can just tap it in, roll it in, and nobody's there to stop it from.
Now, right, the game starts, and within, I guess it's 70 seconds or so, we're down, and it comes from almost nothing. They play a long ball forward, we get a goal kick out of it. It kind of bounces around in midfield, and then Shelby just kind of lofts it into the area, and it's Cedric, I think, that we were talking earlier. He gets, he just gets absolutely turned and burned, and it was terrible. And he didn't, everybody online and you and I agree, he didn't do nearly enough. But when that goes in, what does that do for you as a fan who's now watching the match? Like, what happens to your confidence or your, I don't know, just your thoughts on us actually taking something from the game when that happens so early?
Well, if you look back on the way we played the whole entire season, seeing us concede in the first, just into the second minute of the game, it's disheartening. It makes you not really want to watch the rest of the game, because you already know as a fan how the rest of it's going to play out. You've seen it before. You've seen that it just falls apart. The team lose all their confidence straight away, because our team is mainly based on young players. There's no proper captain. There's nobody who's willing to emphasize the players and get them in the mood of the actual game. Nobody gets into it properly. So once we go 1-0 down, the confidence is lost, and we know that the game is most likely lost as well.
I was hoping that would kind of wake the team up when it happened. Like, that would be the kind of kickstart. They punched us right in the mouth, and maybe now we'll be in it. And we just never got into it. I think this is one of the first times I've seen any other midfielders really take control of ours. Usually between Lemina, Højbjerg, and Romeu, teams at least have an equal fight on their hands. And I thought that yesterday their midfield seemed to kind of be in control. And even though we had lots and lots of possession, it was never going anywhere. And Newcastle were organized. They got back in their positions quickly. That is kind of signature Rafa Benitez style. And once they were out in front, it was going to be difficult for us to break them down and really because they didn't have to come forward. And then when they did come forward for that second goal. I mean, that happened so kind of quickly. It was almost like the EFL leg 2 of the semifinal against Liverpool, where we scored from their corner. It was the proper pass. It was with pace and quickness, and the players were decisive, and that's exactly what they did to us. They just tore us apart. And so, all of it is disheartening. And I thought there was no chance we were coming back from 2-0 down in the second half, but we'll get to that. But kind of going through the first half, really anything stand out to you, that any kind of theme or any plays that stand out to you, any moments in the match where you thought we, maybe looked like we had a chance or looked like we were kind of completely out of our league?
Throughout the whole game, we looked like a championship side. We didn't look like we wanted to even be in the Premier League. Straight away from that goal, we just looked like we knew this was the game over. We knew that we were going further down into the table. We knew we weren't making any improvements. And the defense, the passing was so sloppy. They just lobbed the ball at each other rather than just thinking, okay, you make this run, I'm going to hit the ball in front of you. They just threw it at each other, and it kept going out constantly. Nobody kept the ball in. The whole thing was sloppy. It was like the beginning of Claude Puel's tenureship at Southampton. Like, nothing's really changed. The team keeps getting rotated. Nobody really knows who they're playing with, and when they pass the ball, it just rolls out. We may have most of the possession, but at the same time, we don't have any communication. There's no leadership, like I say.
With that being the case, do you think that a guy like Steven Davis is necessary to have in the squad? Or, is this where we really miss a guy like Jose Font being in the squad, because he was that leader and that captain that we had? And even if he wasn't playing, if he wasn't the best player in the squad, he was the leader. And now I think we lack that because we don't have it from the manager and we don't have it from guys that are in the squad. But do you see anybody in the squad that can really be that person, or are we going to have to look long term into bringing in kind of a veteran to come in and fill that space?
Well, see, that's interesting because you bring up Jose Font there, and I think, right with that, he was the perfect captain. He would never sit back. He would always offer something going forward if he knew the team were giving up. He would scream people, and it's the same thing Van Dijk offered as well. They just would never give up for the team. They would constantly you if you're doing something wrong. If you're just walking around, you get told that you're doing wrong. And we don't have that at the moment. And mainly it's because you normally have either your goalkeeper or your back line as captains, and no veterans there. Our centre-backs are incredibly young for football players, and the fullbacks, Ian Bertrand is not, for me, a captain at all. He says, I'm ready to get the team up and going with or without the captain's armband, but I don't see him doing anything. And of course, as you say, Cedric is below par in the Newcastle game, and for me, he has been for the whole season too. I think the only person in our team who can, in the current squad, especially the one against Newcastle, who could possibly be the captain would have been Lemina, but he's also somebody who is never really heard. You never see him telling the players what to do. And there's no leadership anywhere for me. So I definitely think it's something we have to look out for.
And I don't know, for me, if you had it coming from the manager, that would be fine, but it's not happening. And I think everybody, you listen to any pundit who watches Southampton 1 or 2 matches, and they quickly tell you, he doesn't look like he's communicating clearly. He doesn't look like the manager doesn't look like he has control. And whether that's true or not, that's how it looks to me, and it's how it looks to, I think, to others as well. And so when you have that, and then you couple that with the lack of leadership on the field, it becomes, you get score lines like yesterday, and you get games where even though you have all the possession, you can't score, and at best you get a draw, and that leads to you going down oftentimes. So, I always think back to, I think it's the year that Leicester won the title. Tottenham were great that year. That should have been them winning the title, but they drew too many games, and that's happened to them. And draws will come back to haunt you eventually. But a couple of things kind of in that first half is, Wesley Hoot, Jack Stevens, a couple other players, Højbjerg, visibly frustrated. Whether it's the the fact that whether it manifested itself in that they were conceding fouls or yelling or having to be talked to by the referee or whatever it was, that's not normal for them. I don't think they're normally kind of that animated. So because of that, can we take that as a good thing that the players obviously recognize that there's an issue there, or is that they're too young to be doing that and having that kind of frustration because they can't kind of keep their head, or how did you kind of see that?
Well, for me, I just kind of saw it as disorganization. Everyone is yelling at each other, screaming of frustration. And I think it all just comes back to the same idea of there being no leadership, because they honestly look clueless. They do things because it's spur of the moment. They think, oh, okay, we have to act upon this. There's a counterattack. Let me just slide in a slide tackle, and then there's a foul, and they're angry about it. It's something they have to do, but because they're not organized. If someone was wearing the captain's armband and set back, don't foul them. Just be about it. Just get the ball away and then boot it down the pitch. Be more organized. We wouldn't have to be frustrated because we would know what we're doing. Every player on the pitch would know what they're doing. But it all just comes back to the idea of leadership. But no one knows what they're doing. We're not going forward together. We're not going back together. It's always relying on one or two players to do everything. Even in the Liverpool game, I think where we lost 2-0. The back line was sloppy, but it came down to Wesley, who several times, he was the one who had to constantly be fighting off one or two players on the goal line almost. We're relying on one or two players in different situations rather than actually being organized. Yeah.
Now, there were a couple of instances yesterday when it was still 1-0 that I thought were interesting. And we saw Lamina get dispossessed. He's at fault for the second goal, and he gets dispossessed, and McCarthy kind of saves him about 25 minutes in, where ball comes back and I think it's a ball over the top, and Hoot is running back with the forward. McCarthy's coming out. McCarthy chooses not to come and get it. There's a little confusion. Ball goes to Lamina, and Lamina is given kind of a bad ball because I think Hoot plays it to him, and he's got two players kind of on him immediately, and nobody in our midfield, nobody's moving to create a passing lane for him. And eventually he gets dispossessed, and McCarthy has to make a save. And that to me is just, that's so simple. It's so fundamental that you have to move for your teammates, and you have to be aware, like, that's not a good pass. Especially when it's, you have the entire field in front of you, and you can still go back to the goalkeeper. So like when that starts happening, and then you see Lamina lose the ball, who normally doesn't do that. It just looked like you said, like we were completely disorganized. Like we didn't have a plan as to what we're going to do. And then not too long after that, we have a corner. Ward-Prowse puts it into the area. Lamina completely misses on the volley attempt. And then we're off to the races, and Cedric, I don't know. I don't want to put any, I guess I shouldn't put blame on people there, but, it was 3-on-2 with Lamina chasing back, and they managed to score, which, they made the proper passes, and I guess they did the right thing, but I would have wished we could have, done better, somewhere in there. If Lamina just gets a foot on it, that nothing happens, that's all it takes.
Yeah, but it's like nobody wants to take that risk. Nobody wants to be the player who throws their body on the line, because then if it does go wrong, they're the one who gets the flame rather than the whole team. Whereas if it's a counter-attack, everyone can point out different things. For example, you said in that counter-attack, Lamina was chasing back, Cedric wasn't really in the right place. Nobody really was, and Lamina missed that volley, and it was quite tragic to see, really. Everyone kind of didn't know what they were doing, and so the whole team gets blamed. Whereas if Lamina does get back and he does throw his body in the way and he does make the block, or he doesn't, the pressure is on him, not on the whole team. It's like nobody wants to take that because they feel like they can't handle the pressure.
Maybe that goes down to leadership. Maybe, like we said, maybe it all goes back to that. And
definitely.
And because I can't think of Jose Font kind of, not allowing that to happen. I don't know. And maybe he can't do anything to stop that, but I don't know. I think the mindset would be different if we had, a real leader in the dressing room or on the pitch. I think somebody has to do that. And if Lamina he's got to know there's nobody behind him, and that he is it. And he has to get something on that ball. He has to control it, or put it out of play or something. He can't allow that to happen. And it was poor.
We never really felt like we had a foot in the game, to be honest. That's why I turned it off in the 70th minute, because the passing was just so sloppy. Everything was sloppy, and the players were more frustrated with each other rather than themselves. Like Lamina and Højbjerg were screaming at other players rather than just thinking to yourself, okay, what could I have done to prevent that? What could I have done to get my body on the line to keep the scoreline 1-0, maybe get back into the game? They were just yelling at each other, saying, oh, if I'm going forward, why don't you go backwards? And then the other midfielders thinking exactly the same thing. Together, they're individuals, and a football team is called a football team for a reason. You're a team, you're not individuals.
Yeah. Kind of rewatching parts of the first half, it seemed like anytime we put a ball anywhere near the area, Newcastle, it seemed like Dubravka came out and claimed it with relative ease. I think there was one where he only got, one hand on, he tried to punch it away, didn't quite get there. But defense was able to clean up for him. But for the most part, I thought he kind of eliminated any kind of set piece that we had, any opportunity that we had there. He kind of took care of it. And kind of looking at it from our perspective, I think the only positive we can take is that McCarthy made a couple of good saves. Like the chances that Newcastle had, they took pretty well, but he came out and I think he made the right decision a couple of times, cutting off angles and blocking shots and things like that. But other than that, I can't really think of a positive performance anywhere on the pitch for us.
Yeah, it was one of them games. It was just nothing positive. There's nothing that happened in that game that we can think, okay, we can take this into our FA Cup quarterfinal against who is it, Wigan. Yeah, there's nothing in that game that I think I saw and I want to say, okay, yeah, this is really good. Let's do this against Wigan, because if we do anything we did in the Newcastle game against Wigan, we're not going to go through. That's just what it is. There was nothing good. There was nothing to make me smile about. Nothing to make me think, okay, maybe there is a chance to turn this game around. Straight away from the off, we just looked like the game was over.
Right. And in kind of going into halftime, we had 67% possession, only one shot, and none of them on target. And I think that just kind of sums up the team at this moment. We were never going to cut through them. We were never going to challenge them. We were never going to create anything. And I can't just blame it on everybody having a bad day at the same time, because I don't think that's what it was. I think we've seen symptoms of this for too long to say that, somebody had a bad day, because for so long, like you said, we've been relying on people to have moments of individual defensive brilliance and making recoveries and things like that to kind of keep us safe and keep us level or keep us in matches. And we can't do that. It's not, if we're not going to go forward, at least be disciplined defensively, and we're not. And that, I think for me, that is one of the frustrating things.
Definitely. And like I repeatedly keep saying, I think it all comes back to the idea of leadership, because nobody's saying in this game we need to defend and then go on counterattacks, or saying, okay, in this game we need to put the pressure on because their defense is unorganized most of the time. And if we don't have a captain to do that, Mauricio Pellegrino needs to do that. But he is so stubborn with his tactics that he doesn't want to change anything. He keeps saying, playing Carrillo and playing Gabbiadini is a possibility. And if it's a possibility, why does he not play it? That's my concern with him. He's so stubborn with his tactics and he refuses to change them.
Yeah, and I don't understand it, because it's obviously not working. But he seems like he's tied to it way too much.
It's really frustrating. Really, really frustrating to see. Because if even Claude Puel changed his whole formation and system throughout the season. I didn't like Claude Puel as a manager at the club with the football he was playing, but he did change the formation. He did try out new things. So we're just getting worse and worse managers, really. Yeah,
that is frustrating. Now, coming out of halftime, we made two changes immediately. And Sims came on for Lamina, and I thought Lamina had maybe his worst 45 minutes of the entire season. In that, Long came on for Tadic. I like Tadic. I won't defend him here. He didn't have a great first half. He seems to be getting the start each and every week, kind of despite what people are seeing and saying. And bringing on Long for him here, I'm not really sure kind of what the thought process was there, but that's what happened. And then eventually in the 66th minute, Gabbiadini comes on for Carrillo. So now we have Long and Gabbiadini on, but not Carrillo or Carrillo. And so this is a giant disaster as far as I'm concerned. But we did create a few more opportunities in the second half, but I think it was because Newcastle were sitting, increasingly deep, maybe perhaps too deep, but I think only 2 shots on target the entire match. So once again, not really tested to the amount that we would have hoped, given that we had made, every single one of those changes is an attacking change. But it's almost like we're just putting players on the pitch and hoping they can do something rather than, like you said, being organized and having a consistent game plan going forward.
Yeah, the whole match was disappointing everywhere, and it kind of says a lot about the team, really. If you look throughout the whole season, everyone keeps saying the same thing. We're a team who has all the possession, and we can go forward, but we can't put the ball in the back of the net. These substitutes at halftime were really, really pointless, because, Sims coming on, okay, yeah, now he adds more to the attack. Shane Long I have no clue, because you've taken off a playmaker in Tadic, and you've brought on a pacey striker who doesn't know how to work with Carrillo because Carrillo isn't based on pace. And I think it's pretty obvious that Carrillo works well with Gabbiadini in setting him up. And it was just disappointing to see that Shane Long comes on, a player who hasn't been performing, who hasn't scored that many goals, only one in the season, and he has to come on and now try and turn a game which we there doesn't seem to be a recovery of. He has to try and turn that on its head.
So, I guess any other points kind of stand out to you? I thought that Newcastle, the players had a lot of time and space on the ball in the box, it seemed like. So when they did get chances, they were able to kind of convert them. I thought Shelby had entirely too much time on the edge of the area with nobody closing him down to be able to find Richie. And, if you kind of look at the goals we conceded yesterday, you have an individual error, somebody just not putting their body on the line like we talked about. You have kind of people being out of position and not putting themselves kind of in the right, I don't know, just not being aware of what's around them from Lamina on that corner when he goes for kind of glory. I mean, that ball's probably going into the stands if he hits it anyway. So why not, knock it down and put it back in the box and see what happens. And then the last one is just a kind of a whole team organizational kind of letdown. Like nobody's really willing to step into that and put their body on the line and make the extra effort. And so I think there are a number of different factors, and it shows that it's not just kind of one reason that we're losing matches. It's the entire team needs. There are many sections, I guess, of the team, or many aspects that need to be addressed, and that is worrying because we're now 7 or 8 games left in the entire season, and we're fighting for a place in the Premier League, and we don't look like a team that's going to stay there.
Definitely not. And it is really confusing if you really think about it. A team that finishes top 8 4 seasons in a row, bearing in mind that 2 seasons ago that was 6th place, and now we're fighting for relegation. It just shocks me to see how fast things can turn around. And I think if you look at another example of this, it is Leicester City. They won the league and then suddenly they were struggling for relegation too. But they changed their manager. They bring in Claude Puel eventually, and now they're back on form. And whilst I understand Claude Puel didn't work with us, he worked for them because of the formation that he used and the kind of football he wants to play. And clearly we don't have the right manager for that to turn it around and get us back up in the table to secure safety. But because we obviously have the players who can do that. Gabbiadini is obviously a goal scorer. We see it constantly. McCarthy is obviously a good goalkeeper. We see him constantly do things which Forster wouldn't have done. But it's just right now there is nobody taking charge. Nobody saying you have to do this. It's do what you want and maybe it'll work out.
Yeah. All right. I don't know. You have anything to say about the rest of that? Because I feel like I'm good on that.
Yeah. Me too.
All right. So I guess the one thing that is in my mind about this is going forward now, we have an FA Cup match next weekend, and then there's 2 weeks off. So 3 weeks until we play another Premier League match. I think other teams play Premier League matches next weekend, if I'm correct. I don't think everybody just stops because people are in the FA Cup. So because of that, there's a good chance that over that international break, we are going to be sitting in the relegation zone if the other teams around us can pick up points. So if that happens, is that going to be psychologically damaging, knowing that we'll have to make up a game and until then we're going to be kind of behind? Is that going to be damaging to the squad, do you think?
I think definitely, and especially if we lose against Wigan, because I have no doubt in my mind that it's going to be a tough quarter final. Wigan have won the FA Cup before and they know they won it, and it'll be a massive help to their club. If we lose that game and then we also have teams around us winning, we get pushed into the relegation zone and then they have to go off to international duty, and there are quite a few people in our squad that do get chosen to go to international duty, and it kind of just lowers confidence everywhere around the squad. And if they go off to international duty with that mindset of at home it's not good enough and they play good international, it kind of just disorganizes everything even more, because they want to do well but they can't because they know, okay, we're on international duty with victory, but people will just think of me as this player who's on this team that isn't doing very well. And I think it just continues to knock the confidence of the team and makes them perform even worse.
Yeah, and I also worry that so I would think that some of their international counterparts will know that what's going on at the club is not necessarily all down to that player, and it's that maybe the performances they're putting in are not necessarily, the performances that they know their teammates can put in. So I think it also becomes pretty toxic in terms of, you start looking at other places. You have players on your international team who play at other clubs who might say, hey, consider coming here, or, how about this? Or, we're going to have a spot, or this guy's going. And all of a sudden now you're going to have people start to look other places because I'll be honest, Ryan Bertrand's not going to play in the championship.
No, of course not. And there was several rumors that both Bertrand and Cedric were heading off to Chelsea last season, but they didn't go through, with them both posting pictures of themselves in London during the transfer window. But those deals never came, and now Bertrand's being constantly linked with Manchester City with Benjamin Mendy out for injury. And it is players like Mendy, players like Lamina who won't play in the Championship because they know how good they are. You can't go from being in a Champions League final to playing in the Championship in England.
Yeah.
These kind of players will look elsewhere, and it's quite difficult for us because once we lose those key players in people like Bertrand and Cedric and Lamina, the team that kind of plays around them will just fall apart, and we have like even less leadership, even less organization, and we will just become even more poor. And I think the perfect example of that would be Sunderland, because they lose their best players, they can't play well, and the whole team just falls apart.
Jesus. Yeah, it's I can't see those guys sticking around. You don't have European champions playing in the championship. This is not how it works. They want to play in European competitions like the rest of their teammates, and whether you do that in Porto or whether you do that for Manchester City or Chelsea, that's, you're getting the highest level of competition possible. And right now in the championship, I'm not saying the championship is a bad league. To be honest, I'm not totally familiar with it coming, being in America. We don't get a lot of the championship. Yeah. We usually get 2 or 3 matches a week. And when it was on beIN Sport last year over here, it was okay because they would show kind of the teams that had just come down, because they still had a Premier League fan base that had been watching on the other networks that show the Premier League here. But once you're gone down there 2 or 3 years, you're kind of, you'll be lucky if you can get on TV. And they like to show Leeds, they like to show Aston Villa because they have a big following here. And to be honest, Saints just don't. We are one of as much as they've tried to build American partnerships and things like that, Saints just don't have a huge following here. And I can say that just from trying to talk to people and trying to find people who support Saints. It's hit and miss, and even in big cities, it's tough to find a group of Saints kind of fans getting together to watch a match because they're just not there. I was, when I watched the EFL Cup final, I drove 3.5 hours to the bar to watch it, and there were 7 of us. And this is LA, and LA is a huge city, but there were 7, and that's it. And the bar was packed with Man United fans, and it was atrocious to have to be around them. But then also, knowing that there were only 7, and that's, it's great. I still talk to those guys. They're great, but it's, to think that some TV company is going to continue to show the matches here in the States when we're down in the championship is probably not a correct assumption, but let's not, I feel like I've kind of digressed. So, we do have some questions from listeners. We have several, we put out the last call and all of a sudden they started flowing in. So I've been trying to update as we're talking, but, let's see. I think there were, let's just start with the one from Instagram, from @HMSTHIL from HM Still. I think, sorry if I messed that up, but we said we've been in or near the relegation zone for 2 months. How have the board let it go this far? What kind of thinking would lead them to believe Pellegrino would keep us up? And to you, I would ask, have you seen anything all season long that maybe to you would signal that there was a chance we were getting better, or we were improving, or that we would stay up?
I don't think there's anything showing that we're getting better. I think there's obvious signs that Pellegrino's tactics are being shown in matches now, and they are playing the way he wants them to play. But I don't think it's us playing better. I think it's just us playing differently. And I don't think I think it's again, like Corbeau, a style that doesn't work with our team. And I think with the board, I think they don't think he's going to keep us up, but I think they want us to go down almost. They want the players to go, because I think it was Ralph Kruger who labeled us as a small club in his interview. He spoke about how we're a small club and how Pellegrino is apparently taking us in the right path, but there seems to be no signs of improvement.
Yeah, I think for me, the only time I could ever see us making any sort of improvement would have been, I won't even say an improvement. There was just enough kind of in the wins that he got at the right time. We would go so many weeks without a win, and everybody would be, super unhappy. And then we get a win, and it'd buy him just a little bit more time with the board. And I'm not saying it was the correct decision, but he seemed to do that enough times to the point now where, if he wins at Newcastle or he wins against Wigan next week, then it kind of buys him a few more weeks. And I don't really think it's appropriate. I think this is a point where, and we'll get to it in a minute, where the FA Cup, I don't know how I feel about it. I'm an American fan, so it's a little bit different. I'm not tied to it like some of the fans who listen in the UK, and I respect that. But for me, it's kind of all about Premier League survival, because that guarantees me I can still be a part of it, you know?
Yeah. But I think winning the FA Cup, I think if you win it, you get European football. I can't remember. I think that's what they said.
Yes.
And so if we win that, we get the Europa League back. But at the same time, there's no point in being in the Europa League and also getting relegated.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of just humiliating, because once we get relegated, our best players leave, and then we have this weakened squad in the Europa League. We won't stand a long chance in there at all.
No.
Not only with watching it in America, but with the idea that we will just lose a big part of the players we have and a big part of the fan base if we are to go down.
And I think there are some fans out there, and I could be wrong, but I think there's some fans out there who are totally happy with that, who think that we have more and more plastic fans that only like us since we've been in the Premier League. And I don't ever know if they're referring to fans like me who didn't even come to the Premier League or didn't even come to football until relatively recently, or if it's people who live in the area who, were wearing Man United shirts before Saints were in the Premier League and kind of established, or whatever it is. But, really, like, you choose your team and you support them. And sure, it gets hard to support them if they go down, and some people will kind of lose interest. And I think you've seen, just fans, it's hard to go watch the same thing every week. And it doesn't make you a bad fan. It just means like, man, I have so many hours of enjoyment and so much money to spend on kind of enjoyment and relaxation that this isn't it. It's not working for me anymore. And maybe I don't want to do this. And so maybe it's just a different mindset, but I don't know. Now we have a couple more questions. One's from Jason Dickey. He's at Jason Dickey 33 on Twitter. And he says, what is the realistic expectation that the players will wake up after that loss? Meaning the one against Newcastle. Pellegrino won't change. And now the players have been sleepwalking, I think is what he means. But what do you think will bring some kind of fire to his team? So what do you think it's going to take to wake the team up, I guess? I think it's going to take them taking a hard look at themselves and thinking what can they actually offer to the team. Because everybody, I think, especially in the Newcastle game, is performing below par, below what they should be able to do. Especially in players like Cedric, Lamina, and all of the players going forward. We didn't buy Carrillo for the record-breaking amount just because Pellegrino knew who he was, because he had experience with him as a good striker, as a striker who can score. And so I think every player just needs to take a look at themselves and say, what part do I play in this team? And midfield and centre-back need to think, am I the person who can order everyone around, or am I the person who listens to orders and gets my job done? I think everybody just needs to look at themselves, speak to each other, and learn to communicate and decide who is doing what in the team. Vast Majority 22 asks, what's the main reason for Saints' league position this season? You think it's the manager, or is it more complex than that? What do you think?
Well, I think we were always going this way before Club World. Well, in the Club World saga, we fell quite far down, and we managed to go back up through lucky wins and other teams losing around us. But I think we were always heading down this way, and I think it has something to do with more the board than the manager, because the board aren't giving the managers the right amount of money to spend, in my opinion, and the right kind of oomph to say, oh, if we don't perform better, you're going to lose your job. I think it's down to the board. It's a little bit of everything, really, because players aren't showing enough passion, aren't playing the Southampton way, the managers aren't doing the right tactics, and the board just aren't pushing the manager. I think it's a bit of everything. Yeah,
I think there are definitely some issues that are larger than just the manager's tactics, but obviously that's what we see. And people were writing about it and talking about it earlier in the season, that it's the manager's the easy target. He's what we see, and it's easy to direct your anger there, or if a player has a particularly bad performance. But there are reasons that the manager has the players he has, and I tend to think that if two managers in a row come in and play a similar style with our team, if that's what two, UEFA pro level licensed coaches are seeing in our squad, maybe that's what's in our squad. Maybe that's what they think that's the best they can put out there. And, at some point, maybe you have to look at the recruitment and say, maybe there are things that we're missing in the squad or whatever, but I don't know. And I don't know. I don't have an answer, but I definitely think it's something kind of greater than just the manager, messing it up. Because I think otherwise we could have changing from quad to well didn't matter. Like somebody would do something different with the squad, I think. But I don't know. Jay, who's on Twitter at Granty_SFC, says, do you think the FA Cup is still more important, or due to our league place that we have to focus on staying up more? And I know we kind of addressed this a little bit, but if you want to revisit, for you personally, what would you rather see the club do? Would you rather see them go on and win the FA Cup and get relegated? Or would you rather see them kind of bow out of the FA Cup, whether it's this round or the next round, and stay up and maybe finish a little higher up the table?
I'd rather see us stay up because the FA Cup is going to be there every season. If we are to get relegated, the Celtic fans will show, and everyone will lose a bit of interest. Even if you're a real fan like myself, I know that it's even hard to watch championship games and TV around in the UK where I live. So I wouldn't be able to watch the games as much. I would just, as time goes on, I would lose interest. But the FA Cup is always going to be there every season. We keep going for it. Currently, right now, our Premier League position is what's most important to us, in my opinion.
Yeah, and just having a look at the quarterfinals, you still have Tottenham, Man United, Leicester, and Chelsea. We haven't beaten any of those people this week or this year. Brighton's also there. Swansea. I don't think we've beaten Brighton or Swansea either. So even if we get by Wigan, it doesn't equal an FA Cup win by any means. It's going to be tough for us to get there. And I think at this point in the season, those squads, Tottenham's obviously out of Europe, so they're going to be focusing on the FA Cup. Man United, we don't know, but they seem to be able to park the bus and find a goal somewhere, so they can do that. And Leicester City, this is really what they should be going for at this point. They're not going to get into Europe any other way. They're not going to get relegated. So they're going to be putting out a full strength squad each and every week. And you have to think that every time Claude Puel comes up against us, if we happen to draw him, he is rejoicing in the fact that he knows that he can beat us, and he wants to beat us because of kind of how his tenure ended with the club.
Definitely. And I think Leicester are in that position to be able to focus on the FA Cup because they know they're safe. They know that if they lose one or two Premier League matches, they're not going to go down. And that's because of the safety that Claude Puel has gotten them to. And now they can focus on the FA Cup and finish mid-table as well as being in the Europa League. That's perfectly fine for them. That's what Leicester should be achieving after especially winning the title. And for last season and possibly and all the seasons before is what we should have been achieving. But with the current position we're in, we can't exactly put focus on the FA Cup because we could win against Wigan and then drop into the relegation zone and then get knocked out by, let's say, Tottenham or United. And then we've got no FA Cup and we're in the relegation zone. And for me, that's just not worth risking.
Yeah, and with that, confidence and everything else is gone. So it would be
exactly.
all around, I think, a disappointment and a bad thing for the club overall. But I do want to say that I understand if somebody is, who's been supporting Saints for however long and never seen them win a trophy or only seen them win one trophy in their lifetime, like I have to give that to them and say, if I don't hold it against anybody for wanting the club to win the FA Cup. And if you have to choose one or the other, you're choosing the FA Cup because that's a trophy. I don't want to put anybody down for that. Ideally, of course, we'd like to stay up and win it, but we'll see. And I have to be honest that when I first started watching, I had no idea how a team that could be, this like so far down the table, a team that finished 12th the year before was somehow in European competitions. Like, why? I thought you were supposed to put your best and brightest in there, and why are they there? Or why is Aston Villa there? And then, getting relegated or whatever. But then I figured out, how it all works. And now I understand, and I'll probably cut that out, but we'll see. I don't know if I want to admit that to everybody, but, but Darren Boyce Smith, who's at Boyce_Smith DJ, says a new manager couldn't do any worse, so making a change now would be the right time to do it. Do you agree? And to you, I guess, would you say make the move now, or do you think that we've waited too long, or what do you think?
I think it's just we've waited too long. I think we should wait till the end of the season. Look at the players who don't fit in with what the Southampton way is. Get rid of those, and a manager who can work with the players who can fit into a style.
All right. And then one last one here from Tactics FC. It says, which is more damaging to the club? The fact that we've lost so many managers, we lost Koeman, we've lost Pochettino, or the fact that we lose our players? You think of Wanyama and Schneiderlin and Lallana, Mane, all of these players kind of going to other teams. Which of those do you think is most damaging for us?
I think it's definitely the managers because our recruitment's always been able to bring in players who, or naturally have been able to bring in players who can replace those we've lost. We brought in kind of players who we feel like can replace people like Graziano and Sadio Mane and players like that. We've always brought in players we feel can replace them, but we don't have the tactics or the strictness of Pochettino or Koeman. You hear these stories. Pochettino was apparently always tough on his players, and when they complained about it, he was even tougher. So we need the managers who aren't willing to sit back. And I think that's what Pellegrino is. I think he's just a yes man and just lets people do whatever they want. I think it's definitely the managers and how strict they are. And I think our recruitment is always able to replace the players that we lose.
All right. Well, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, because we don't have to talk about it anymore, I think that's it. And I kind of agree. I kind of think that, definitely the players, the players going, I can understand that hurting the club, because eventually, if you miss on a player, then you're in a bad spot because you spent some of the money. You obviously didn't get the players aren't guaranteed to come through. But with the manager, and no manager really stays at a place for 5, 10, 15 years anymore. But to not be able to develop the style you want to play and be able to kind of groom your team in that model, I think hurts us. I think having a different manager that maybe wants to play a slightly different style, with slightly different ways of communication, and sometimes that's all it takes is for a message not to get through, is just the manager not being able to communicate with individual players. And if you have 2 or 3 players on the field not quite clear of what's going on, that's enough to disrupt everything, and it can result in several losses or draws instead of wins.
Definitely, yeah. Definitely agree with that.
But I guess before I let you go, is there anything else that you want to say? Is there anything that stands out? Anything you want to say before we wrap this up?
The only other thing I really have to say is that I think the only way we can really move forward as a club is to show our passion, because the players aren't playing for it. The manager doesn't really seem to care. And the only thing that's left, really, the only voice for the club is the fans. And I think we need to go to games, we need to chant, and we need to show banners that show that we're the way things are, because we are the last line of defense almost. We're the only ones still standing here for the club.
Yeah. I will be at West Ham away. Yeah, I've never, when we set the calendar, it's spring break. I'm a teacher. We're going, and the whole family's going. I got a 7-year-old and a 12-year-old, and I'm kind of worried. I'm worried.
I would definitely be concerned given the scenes in the last West Ham game where the fans were constantly running onto the pitch.
Yeah. And I saw some other things in the stands that I wasn't really thrilled about either. But yeah, I don't know. And then the Premier League in USA is like it's basically the marketing wing of the Premier League, but they are pretty good about, if you're meeting with a couple of other fans, they'll help promote it and they'll help show, and they want to show everybody kind of going to the games and doing this. Newcastle had a big meetup yesterday, like I think outside of Chicago, and it was you get 40, 50 people in a bar that are all rooting for the same thing. It's kind of cool, but they're doing this giveaway, and it was like the ultimate fan adventure, and it was tickets in like, full flyover, and it was to Southampton, West Ham. And I was like, they put it out, midweek last week. They had no idea that what it was going to mean, because it's a huge game in terms of relegation. It's a huge game in terms of, these are 2 clubs who are angry with their manager, who are angry with their board. One fan base who was obviously willing to show that in a number of ways, and one who's getting there. I saw things kind of circulating in terms of, meet outside of one of the stands at the next home game and bring signs and do this. And I mean, we'll see. I don't know how it's all going to work out. And, I might give my kids more than they bargained for, I guess, when we do show up to the London Stadium.
Yeah, maybe.
We'll see.
Well, maybe. It's a crucial game for sure.
Absolutely. Well, Josh, I appreciate you coming on, and I just, I know it's Mother's Day, and I apologize for that. I'll pay attention to the calendar. For the next person is going to benefit. You won't.
Not problem, man. I appreciate the invitation, so it's good. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And you're more than welcome back anytime, and we'll keep in touch, and hopefully this will go well.
I hope so.
All right, man. Well, you have a great rest of the evening. Tell your mother Happy Mother's Day from the awkward guy in California who you talked to for an hour. And we'll talk to you next time.
All right, dude. I'll see you in a bit.
And that does it for another episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I hope that you enjoyed it. Special thanks goes out to Josh, who runs the Saints FC page on Instagram. Thank you for taking the time to join me. I really enjoyed chatting with you. Tell your mom happy belated Mother's Day. Sorry. Everybody out there, if you don't already follow Josh, you should, at the Saints FC page on Instagram. The link is in the show notes. Go over and do that now. You can also follow this show at SFCDELL_IVERY on Instagram and Twitter. And we're at Facebook at facebook.com/SFCDelivery. As always, the show is partnered with The Saints Report. For all your Southampton FC news and needs, be sure to head over and check out The Saints Report on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. All of the links are in the show notes. You will not be disappointed. I also want to take a second to thank any new listeners and anybody who submitted a question. You make the show much more interesting when you do that. And new listeners, welcome. I hope you enjoyed it. If not, let me know what you didn't like, and maybe we'll change it. Also like to thank the We Are Southampton page on Instagram for doing the artwork for the show. Matt, who runs the page, has also been a guest several times. He's given me lots of help along the way. So special thanks to Matt. Head over and check out the We Are Southampton page for all your matchday edits, news, polls, competitions, and more. You will not be disappointed, I promise. If you are new and you want to make sure you get the next episode, be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, Acast, Google Play, TuneIn Radio, or even Spotify. All music comes courtesy of the Free Music Archive at freemusicarchive.org. The intro song is Epic Song by Boxcat Games, and the song you're listening to now is Aim is True by Poddington Bear. Normally all of our sounds come from freesound.org. This week, they came from my kids' horrible Christmas play. I don't tell them that, so please don't. It'll hurt their feelings. Don't forget to rate and review the show wherever you do listen. Remember to subscribe. We'll be back next week. And until then, remember that together, we march on.